Videos from old tapes. My name is Michael, and I have a very unconventional job, you might say. But before you judge me, remember that there are many odd professions and ways to make a living out there. My business is quite specific, but, in my opinion, it's not that different from the work of a chef or a builder. What do I do? I buy old VHS tapes, watch them, and earn money from them. How? Let me explain. The main income comes from porn. Vintage from the 80s, explicit from the 90s, diverse from the early 2000s. Home videos, hidden camera, and peeping content. I digitize all this material and upload it to various porn sites, which generously pay me for the original content. Most of the studios that produce these films have long ceased to exist. The actors are either dead or have aged so much that they're unlikely to recognize themselves on 30-year-old film, and the stars of amateur videos probably either don't remember or don't even know about the existence of such recordings. In short, getting a strike from copyright holders when digitizing such content is quite difficult, and this fact works in my favor. This income isn't huge, but it's relatively stable. Enough for bread and butter. The second way to earn money brings in a lot more, but tapes with such content are very rare. These are rare recordings. In modern society, there's a strange belief that everything can be found on the internet, and if something can't be found, it must have never existed. But that's not true. Many video recordings, as well as music, books, paintings, etc., have disappeared without a trace for various reasons. For example, a lot of works by the Lumiere brothers have not survived to this day because with the advent of sound in cinema and the replacement of cinema equipment, it was not profitable for theaters to store films that had lost their relevance. And they burned quite well. Then there were 2 world wars, followed by technological leaps, changes in formats, and video cameras. Some scientists have claimed that of everything that was filmed a little more than 100 years since the invention of the video camera to our days, no more than 10% has been preserved. If you think that in almost 50 years of the VHS format's existence, this hasn't happened, I'm sorry to disappoint you. In our country alone, we can recall lost episodes of various shows, such as various pilot recordings, amateur films, video clips, and commercials. So, if you find something from this lost content, it can be worth a lot of money to the right people. The third way is the most difficult, and honestly, it barely pays for itself. Sometimes I come across recordings featuring famous people. It's good if it's amateur footage of famous pop or rock musicians. It's much worse if you're watching a Christmas celebration recording. For some reason, this holiday often appears on tapes, and you see a child who is happy with the toy they received. You think they have a familiar face, resembling someone famous today, like a politician, musician, or celebrity. You start piecing together clues, recognizing the city from the landscape outside the window, looking for names and surnames in other people's dialogues, examining objects and surroundings. Searching for anything that could confirm your guess. If you manage to do this, you can sell such a tape for a lot of money, but if not, it turns out to be a huge waste of time. Therefore, to put it mildly, I don't like doing this. And now we come to the fourth method. The one for which I started writing all this. Strange recordings. Scary. Incomprehensible and repulsive. Video recordings that make your blood run cold. That's what my story will be about. But before I begin, I want to answer a question that will likely be asked first. Where are the recordings themselves? The answer is, if I digitize and upload anything I talked about above, except for porn, it immediately stops being unique and rare, and therefore loses its value. As I've already told you, I make money from this. I spend a lot of time and effort trying to find anything that might be valuable to collectors. And when I find it, All I want is to get paid for all my efforts. I trade in the original tapes themselves. I don't keep any copies. That's the rule. And if I break it, collectors will turn away from me, and the work of my entire life will go down the drain. Thanks, but I don't want that. Now that we understand each other, let me get to the point. Today I will tell you about 3 videos from my collection. If you like it, maybe I will write about others. Tape number 1. I'll start my story with one disgusting tape. Although I mentioned that digitizing porn provides me with a stable income, even in this area, I have my taboos: no explicit violence, no real torture of people, no child pornography, and no real murder recordings. To give you an idea, in about 8 years working in this field, I've come across such real recordings less than a dozen times. In all cases, I took the tapes, described in detail from whom and under what circumstances they came to me, and brought them to the police. Because of this, I had some issues with law enforcement, but that's not important now. I sincerely believe that if even one of these old recordings helped catch a murderer or a pedophile, or at least served as additional evidence in an existing criminal case, then my numerous hours spent at police stations trying to explain what these tapes were, where they came from, and why I brought them in were not in vain. One such recording left an indelible impression on me. I acquired it quite simply, through acquaintances. My contacts are known to various flea market dealers, as well as those involved in repair, removal of old items, and pawn shop owners. It's convenient for me to work with these people, they already know what I need and the price I pay. The recording was made, according to the date in the corner of the video, in 1999. It captured some sort of costume party in a regular country house. There were about 7 people in the frame, not counting the operator, and all had masks of characters from Tom and Jerry on their faces. At first, I thought I was watching another family Christmas. The video featured a large table with various foods and drinks. Garland lights were burning everywhere. It looked fun and cozy, but the only reason I didn't turn off this amateur film was that everything was happening in complete silence. This whole gathering, with their heads down, sat at the table. No one spoke to each other, no music played, no TV was on. I initially thought there was no soundtrack at all, but turning up the volume to the max, I could finally hear some background noise, muffled voices of people, the operators breathing, and something like the sound of water from an open tap. Nonetheless, this entire company sat in silence in front of the set table. I was intrigued. Then something strange happened. One of the guests stood up, nodded to the camera, and approached an old TV set. After that, he inserted a videotape into the receiver. All those people instantly raised their heads and looked at the screen. The guest played the video. And then I regretted having turned up the volume. That recording started with such wild screams that my heart sank. While I was fussing with the volume settings, the operator brought the camera very close to the TV. There, through the static, I finally managed to see what this strange company was watching. The records show how someone killed a living person. The person screamed, bled, and tried to escape. The knife was plunged into his chest again and again. The sound of cutting flesh mixed with screams of pain and despair. I have no doubt it was not a fake. Distinguishing a real murder recording from a staged one, especially from the late 20th century, is not that hard. The operator zoomed in and out with the camera, capturing the murder details in close-up. His hands shook, and with each second, it became harder to discern what was happening on the TV screen. At that moment, I froze in horror. Although this video lasted no more than 2 minutes, it felt like an eternity to me. But what surprised me most were the final frames when the operator moved the camera away from the TV and turned back to the guests. The recording almost instantly cut off and switched to white noise. I rewound the tape, trying to catch one single moment. I don't know what it was, some optical effect, a filming artifact, or a visual illusion. But for a second, you could see the guests. They had transformed. It seemed as if the masks were replaced with real animal snouts. Hairy, with protruding fangs and bared maws. When I brought it to the police, they laughed, said it was a fake, and gave it back to me. Walking out of the police station, I felt helpless, and when I looked at the tape, disgust overwhelmed me. I rushed home, wanted to burn it, but on the way, I cooled down a bit and decided that selling it would be more sensible. Tape number 2. The next recording was made, again, if the date is to be believed, in 2002. The video camera, apparently fixed on a tripod, recorded a person sitting on a cheap sofa against a blank wall. Nothing unusual. And I swear I wouldn't have paid attention to the tape if it had been rewound to the beginning. But, I was scrolling from the end to the beginning and saw such wild frames that I had no choice but to watch the recording from the first seconds. Essentially, the filming was something like a scientific lecture, lasting less than an hour. Here is its brief transcript. My name is Joe Smith. I'm a parasitologist. Today, I want to document the results of my research. Since 1993, I have been studying white cutilia. This parasitic crustacean is, let's say, known in scientific circles for being the only parasite that can fully replace a host's organ. Sorry, I'm nervous. One moment. In the video, Joe drinks water from a glass. So, I should probably explain a bit more. The thing is, white cutilia is a creature that enters a fish's mouth through the gills and attaches itself to the tongue. Using sharp claws, it drains blood from the tongue, leading to the tongue's atrophy. Then the parasite fully replaces the fish's tongue with its own body. Most importantly, besides this, the parasite does no harm to its host. In my research, I tried to confirm this fact, conducting a series of studies. At this point, the image disappeared but returned after a few seconds. Thus, I assumed that a global study of this parasite is necessary within the theoretical possibilities related to human disease treatment. Since the parasite is relatively small, about 1 inch long, I spent the last 5 years attempting to selectively breed a crustacean exceeding the necessary size for my experiments of 6 inches. The image disappeared again. The screen showed only gray static. About 10 seconds passed. After a month-long course of rehabilitation and treatment, I must state the fact, the main goals and objectives of my experiment were achieved. Today I begin writing a scientific paper, which has phenomenal potential. God! I've already called my medical colleagues, they, predictably, didn't believe me. Think I invented a prosthesis. You should have heard their voices on the other end of the phone. Joe laughed. But, I've already scheduled a meeting with them for the upcoming weekend, they're going to freak out when they see. And now I want to get to the main point. All these years I've worked hard. Clung to every chance. After undergoing a glossectomy in 1991, where most of my tongue was removed, it was a major blow for me. I couldn't believe I would never be able to speak again. Years, God, years of hard work, and I'm recording this. Here. The parasite has completely replaced my tongue, but that's not all. Now, I'm developing a theory that with the help of bred white cutilia specimens, it will be possible to replace other organs. This is just amazing. Look at this. And at this point, Joe takes the camera in his hands, brings it close to his face, and sticks out his tongue. A ribbed, milky-colored, thumb-thick larva was tightly attached to Joe's tongue. This creature had 2 small eyes, and they were open. After this, the recording ends. What was that? I have no idea. It looked very realistic, but, however, I do not dismiss the possibility that it was some kind of amateur staged film. I searched for information about this person, and there was never a parasitologist doctor with that name in the USA. In conclusion, it can be said that either this character never existed in reality, or someone made sure he was forever forgotten. Tape number 3. The next recording is, I don't know how to explain it. A compilation of clips, but without any editing cuts. Imagine you have a video camera with only one cassette inside. You turn on the camera, film for a couple of minutes, and turn it off. After some time, say a year, you turn it on again and record a few more minutes. And so on, over many years. The first scene. 1997, a young couple, apparently husband and wife, running along a beach at sunset. They are joyfully shouting, embracing each other. The operator films them from a distance of 5 to 7 yards. Interference. The second scene. 1998, a girl lying in a hospital bed holding a newborn baby. The operator says, "Megan, my dear, didn't I tell you? We can make it. It's our girl, smile for the camera." Interference. The third scene. 1998, the operator walks around an empty apartment, with only brick walls around, no furniture or renovation, and narrates, "This is where Laura will live. Here we'll put the baby crib, and here will be the play table." Approaches a window. The windows need fixing. They don't close properly. The floor seems a bit uneven, too. But it's all right. We made it. We did it. Oh, how much we gave for you, Laura, if only you knew. When you're grown up, I'll show you this recording. You'll see what your mother and I started from. From these very brick walls. From this creaky floor. The fifth scene. 1999, the operator films a Christmas tree. Your first new year, Laura. The very first. How happy we are. Let's go see how you're doing. The camera moves to another room. There you are. Asleep, sleepyhead. A child lies in a crib, hugging a teddy bear. Well, sleep, sleep. I hope the neighbors don't wake you up with their noise. Sleep, my angel. Interference. The sixth scene. 2000, the operator opens the door to a house. Right from the threshold, it's evident that the whole house is covered in snow. Huge drifts lie in the hallway. The walls are frosted over. There's no light. It's the same house as before. The operator slowly walks into one of the rooms. Snow crunches loudly under his feet. There, on the floor, a man and a woman lie hugging each other. They are blue, frozen to the floor, and covered in ice. The operator approaches closer. Films the woman's face in close-up, then the man's. Then zooms out to show them together again. From their positions, it feels like they were trying to protect each other from some threat. Meanwhile, the operator leaves the room and slowly heads to the nursery. There he approaches the familiar wooden crib. Inside, a frozen child. Small, defenseless. One of his hands still clutches a teddy bear, and the other stretches towards the entrance door. The child's face is frozen in a grimace of crying. The last thing we see, the operator tries to pull the teddy bear from the dead child's hands. The operator leans the hand with the video camera against some part of the crib's railing, leaving only the wall in our field of view. In the final seconds of the recording, we see the ice-covered wallpapers of the nursery, hear the breathing of the person with the camera, and ultimately, the action ends with a gruesome sound, akin to breaking an icicle. Interference. What was this? I can't provide an objective assessment. I still hope that this is all part of some movie, with visual effects that surpass professional films. I'm afraid to even imagine for a moment that these clips are real. Too many questions and no answers. What happened? Who was the operator in the last scene? Who killed these people? I don't know. Finally, I want to tell about an incident that didn't happen to me. About 20 years ago, somewhere in the USA, lived a person named, let's say, Dave. He certainly wasn't into digitizing porn, but he was obsessed with finding rare or lost recordings. At that time, in the area where he lived, there was an urban legend that in the early 90s, there was a show that supposedly explored ghost stories and cursed places. Almost an entire season was filmed, but the show never made it to TV. During the production of one of the episodes, the entire film crew just disappeared without a trace. However, this legend was only supported by a couple of newspaper clippings. Basically, there was a show, and then it vanished. That press, to be honest, had a reputation for being tabloid and was often caught spreading outright ducks. Therefore, as you understand, few people took these stories seriously. It's worth noting that the archives of TV companies are a gold mine for collectors of rare video material. Studios producing various TV shows and series provide television company executives with so-called pilot episodes. Before a show is created, a single episode is released containing the entire main concept. This episode is then presented to sponsors from TV companies who, based on these recordings, either kill the material, seeing no potential, or give the project a green light and funding. Statistically, only 1 out of 4 pilot episodes further continues as a full-fledged project. Such trial episodes of aired or unaired projects have always attracted collectors' attention. Getting them was a stroke of luck. It was impossible to legally purchase them from TV companies. This could lead to legal issues, including copyright infringement. But there were loopholes. Minor employees like maintenance staff had access to archives and could quietly swipe a couple of dusty tapes, whose absence no one would notice. And so, Dave came into possession of the pilot episode of that legendary show. Its working title was Survive the Night. The episode lasted about an hour and was divided into 4 parts, each 15 minutes long, between which commercial blocks were planned: morning, day, evening, and night. In the pilot recording, the following was featured. Morning. The host, along with a team of operators and experts on paranormal phenomena, arrived at a cursed building. They met with its owners and inquired about the history of the place. The pilot mentioned a house where a young married couple constantly encountered poltergeist phenomena. The team listened to the owners, found out where and what they saw: dishes clanging in the kitchen, items moving around the house on their own, items left in one place later found in absolutely different places. The host gave viewers a short explanatory lecture on what this poltergeist was and proposed a plan of action. The morning part ended with the hosts escorting the spouses out of the house and starting to bring in ghost-catching equipment. Day. Here the host, along with the team, set up cameras and photo traps around the house. Experts on paranormal phenomena, using some sophisticated devices, searched for power spots and paranormal activity. They invited a local priest into the house and took a straightforward interview from him. Besides, they visited the neighbors and interviewed them too. The neighbors shared terrifying information about the house. Supposedly a mass murder occurred there, after which no family could live there for more than a few months. This part ended with shots of the setting sun and panoramas from the house, showing all the preparations of the ghost hunters. The recording ended with a close-up of a vase with bright red apples on the kitchen table. Evening. This segment was a build-up to the events that would occur in the night part. The audience was intentionally frightened, equipment malfunctioned, photo traps were triggered without any visible reasons, and the vase with apples from the previous part was suddenly found overturned. Later, an operator left alone screamed, attracting the attention of the entire film crew, and afterward told about seeing some entity in a dark corner. A state of panic was artificially induced within the team. Arguments and disputes broke out between the host and the paranormal experts and operators. The part ended with the lights going out throughout the house. Night. This segment was the logical conclusion of all the events led up to by the first 3 parts. Initially, it featured fairly primitive scares, background sounds of crying, unintelligible screams, demonic voices. Visually, they also tried to make viewers shit themselves. Shots of kitchen cabinet doors slamming, apples rolling across the floor by themselves, and several abrupt screamers, where terrifying, disfigured faces appeared on the screen for a fraction of a second. Then, recalling the neighbor's words, the film crew concluded that the house was haunted by the restless souls of the family that had died there. The host took out a Bible, began to read prayers, which only intensified the surrounding bedlam. But the rest of the crew joined in the prayer, and at the final words, all paranormal phenomena abruptly ended. This was followed by shots telling that the souls had finally found peace. The family living in the house returned in the early morning, assured that nothing scary would happen to them anymore. In the last frames, the host turned towards the camera and addressed the viewers with the words, "You've watched the episode, Survive the Night. I was your host, Mr. Anderson. And remember, if you encounter something paranormal, something you can't explain, call us. No ghost can survive the night." Overall, the show was quite banal. It contained clearly staged frames and cheap visual effects. The script was not very well developed, and the acting left much to be desired. If not for the story of the disappearance of the entire film crew, no one would ever have sought the recordings of this TV show. But the pilot episode did exist, and for Dave, this fact meant the following: the legend was, to some extent, confirmed. The filming of the Survive the Night show had indeed begun, a fact that became known later after examining documents. And most importantly, Dave held all the aces to be the first to find the recordings of the remaining episodes. The main advantage of this pilot series were the credits. Yes, through them, it was possible to learn the names and surnames of all those who had ever been involved in the filming of the show. And then, through these people, it remained only to find out the fate of Survive the Night and its participants, and possibly locate the presumed storage of the remaining episodes or working materials. Dave was inspired by this idea and spent many years searching for the episodes. He managed to find out that the film crew of 7 people indeed disappeared without a trace during the filming of the 6th, out of the planned 10, episodes. This case did not receive much publicity in the press, as the police, through their media connections, intentionally asked journalists not to write anything about this scandalous case. By that time, the police had already inspected the crime scene and found not a single clue. It seemed that the entire film crew had simply vanished into thin air. Therefore, another attempt was chosen to catch the criminal on hot tracks. The law enforcers assumed that the criminal or group of criminals who committed such a serious and well-thought-out crime. Indeed, 7 people disappeared in one night. Year after year, Dave painstakingly gathered information, communicated with people, and got closer and closer to the recordings he was interested in. He even found several tapes with working materials from the 1st to the 5th episodes of the show. Each of these recordings thrilled him. However, at some point, he became obsessed with only one goal: to find the materials of that very 6th episode, during which the film crew disappeared. And he succeeded. The tapes with the footage from that day were stored in an evidence room at one of the police stations. No one knows how Dave managed to obtain them, but the fact remains. Naturally, the recordings were not edited and represented raw material for the show. However, even at the filming stage, the structure of the show was observed, and the tapes maintained the division into 4 parts already known from the pilot episode. What was there? Morning. The film crew arrived at the mansion's grounds. The recording featured many panoramic shots of the building, detailing elements of the facade. The host exited the van and headed towards the building's entrance. He was greeted by the house owner. Together, they entered the mansion. The owner welcomed the film crew and shared his story. From it, we learned that the mansion was inherited from his grandfather, who had lived there for a long time without any complaints. Upon becoming the heir, the owner, without much thought, decided to rent out the property. The first family that moved in stopped communicating after just a few days. The show's protagonist arrived at the house and found no one there. Assuming the guests had simply left without notice, he posted a new rental advertisement and, after some time, moved a second family into the mansion. They disappeared from the house just as quickly. The belongings of the first and second families were found by the show's protagonist piled together in a huge heap in the building's basement. After this, the mansion's owner called the police. The police conducted a lengthy investigation, suspected the show's protagonist of kidnapping, but, due to a lack of evidence, were forced to drop all suspicions against him. In the end, the owner was left alone with his inheritance, unsure of what to do with it. The show's protagonist believed something paranormal was happening in the house and invited the film crew. He feared that the incidents of people disappearing would repeat. The host, having listened to the owner, began to inquire about strange occurrences in the mansion. The show's protagonist replied that he had never stayed in the house past 8 p.m. When asked why, the owner handed the host a piece of paper with notes and said the following: "Read this after I leave." Day. The film crew escorts the owner out, brings their sophisticated equipment into the mansion. They traditionally invite a priest into the house, take an interview from him. Then, as in other episodes, they interview the neighbors about what they think of this mansion. They share stories prepared by the scriptwriters about often hearing screams at night from the house, seeing lights flickering in the windows. Moreover, they say that their children are not even allowed to approach the building because all the locals consider it cursed. In the next shots, the host unfolds the notes given by the owner, then reads them aloud. "My dear nephew, I leave you this house as an inheritance, but there are a few things you must know before you move in. I understand this will sound like the ramblings of an old man, but I beg you, I implore you by all the gods. You must believe me. This mansion is not ordinary. To live in it, you need to follow several rules. Do not go down to the basement after 8 p.m. You might hear voices calling you. Under no circumstances and never turn on the radio in the house. Forget about it. There is nothing in the house that can receive radio signals. Do not take a bath for more than 10 minutes. Try to bathe in silence. If you hear a sound comparable to that of barefoot children running through puddles, immediately get out of the bathroom. Don't think about your belongings, you'll find them in the basement later. But don't forget about the first rule. Do not place mirrors opposite each other. Never go to sleep with your head towards the door. If, while watching television, the characters on the screen stop talking to each other and just stand looking at the camera, immediately. At this point, the host stopped reading. The operator captured his reaction. What is this nonsense? Did he make this up himself? This wasn't in the script. Corey, turn off the camera. Let's start over. Evening. The film crew gathers in the mansion's living room. The operator films the antique mechanical clock in close-up. It shows 7:50 p.m. The host begins reading text from the teleprompter, telling viewers that now he and the team will try to find out what evil lurks in the house with the help of devices. One of the show participants, an expert on paranormal phenomena, turns on the radio receiver and tunes to a frequency where only static can be heard. He explains to the viewers that now, through this static, he will try to communicate with the spirits of the mansion, ask them questions, and hear their answers. Then this expert reads some sort of incantation, after which he asks, "Are you here, Who are you? What do you want? Groans and screams come through the radio, amidst the static. The director orders to stop the filming. At that moment, the lights go out throughout the mansion. The camera is on, we hear the conversations of the film crew. Hey, what the hell? I didn't give the command to turn off the lights. The lights were supposed to go out in the next scene. Maybe it tripped the breaker. Go check. Give us some light, can't see anything. At that moment, someone turns on a flashlight, and we see that instead of the mansion, the film crew has moved to some other place. What the hell? What the heck is going on here? The operator tries to film the surroundings. Through the dim light, we can only see metal grates. The walls of the room are not visible, the flashlight's brightness isn't enough to thoroughly inspect the surroundings. What the? I don't understand. At that moment, the filming stops. Here are a few frames from that recording. You must want to know what was on the night part of the tape. Unfortunately, dear readers, no one knows. The tape has not been found to this day, but it definitely existed. This is evidenced by the documents describing physical evidence from the police station where Dave found the recordings. The tape labeled as "Night" disappeared from the archive before Dave got to it. What was on it? Will we ever get an answer to the question, what happened to the film crew that night? I don't know. I believe we are close to solving this mystery. I believe that one of us collectors will eventually find this episode, and then I will finally be able to tell you how it all ended. As for Dave, he continued his investigation. Just a month ago, he sent a message saying he had found the exact coordinates of that mansion and plans to visit it in search of any clues. Let's wish him luck. Well, I think this concludes our acquaintance. All these videos are real, and, as I mentioned, are for sale. Essentially, this entire text, as you hopefully understood, was written with one purpose, to find new buyers. If you're interested in my merchandise, don't hesitate, leave your contact details. If I get confirmation of your financial capability through my contacts, I will reach out to you myself. Sincerely, Michael.